There are a number of movies I've watched in my past that certainly led me to believe that love is all we need. But if that were really true, if it was just about love, why are so many couples struggling with some of the main themes inside of that argument that just pull them under, leading to defensiveness, withdrawal, shutdown, resentment that builds, and all the while you're getting further and further and further apart from the person you share your life with? That just can't go on. How can you begin to look under the hood, so to speak, of what's really going on inside of your relationship? What are those repetitive arguments really connected to? And a big way to understand this is to really recognize that you brought in your family imprint and your partner brought in theirs. We also want to add to that our childhood experiences and our previous love relationships. They accumulate and band together to influence the way that you're showing up today. Let's look at some of the key themes that keep relationships at a distance or stuck and circling around the same argument, the same conflict. The first, let's start with the big one, let's get it out of the way, is money. That can be so connected to what went on inside of our family of origin. Do we come from a place of survival? Do we come from a place of, wow, there's always enough, and maybe I'm not as careful as my spouse would like me to be with money decisions? And so getting on the same page about where you're coming from and why, instead of quickly getting to the blame game, can be our first step with managing money from a different space. What I do with all of my clients, our first appointment, is really building out a 3-generation genealogram, really looking to understand where love sort of stopped flowing, where things got complicated, like we're taking a kink out of a hose so that water can flow again. We're looking to find, where did love get compromised? I've worked with couples that have been together almost 30 years with very different spending habits. And not until they started to get honest about what that new car really meant, here's the truth, filling an empty spot inside of them, could they really get out of the blame of you shouldn't have and we should decide this together. All those things might be true, but it didn't stop the purchasing without the agreement from happening. Really recognizing that the other side really feels that money in the bank creates an ease inside of the body and would much prefer that over a brand new car in the driveway. So my encouragement for you to really look at this money situation from a bit of a fresh perspective is to bring in some family history. Let that shine some light on where each other is coming from so that you can make a game plan for your family together. I mean, money is not the most important thing in life, but it ranks right up there with oxygen. It's pretty darn important, and it will become a friction space inside of your relationship if you're not able to come together and really understand what's going on and what's at stake. The second heavy hitter in most long-term relationships is parenting. Different approaches. This can go and become a little more complicated if we're blending families. And so you bring in your children, he brings in his, and the whole concept about what we feel is right to give our children the best start in life, to give them what they need to know to thrive. Many of the clients that I've worked with have had the greatest success in talking about these things before they're in the actual heat of the moment. Being able to understand, hey, this is just the way I parent because maybe it's the way that I was parented. We want to be able to give some intentional thought to how we're responding to what our children need in the moment. And any of you who've had more than one child knows sometimes what works for one doesn't work for the others for all kinds of reasons. And we've got to be able to parent to the children that we have. And this can really look at underlying themes of unconscious biases, things that we've inherited, and the difference you might have with your other parent. So we got to put that out on the table and see what's best and how we move forward. Something I see in couples that have been together a long time is that they both have very different versions of the same relationship. And I think this is because there's a buildup of conversations that haven't really been explored more deeply. It's kind of like, well, we hit this conflict, you have your version, I have mine, and we kind of go off into the different corners of our lives. We're kind of making meaning up in our own mind about what the other person meant or how hurt we are by what the other person said. And sometimes this is where couples can get stopped. We never return back to that placement. And so it begins to be like an injury inside of the relationship. One of the metaphors that I share with my clients quite often is looking at our relationship like a big, strong oak tree. And every time we have a conflict that isn't resolved, or we might lose our patience and say things we don't really mean, but it's just the heat of the moment, is like an axe hit to that tree. And any tree can only withstand so many axe hits before it inevitably falls over. And so if you're teetering in that place of, is the tree that is our marriage about to fall right over, we've got to be able to look at how can we repair some of these injuries? How can we begin to explain, this is what I was really trying to get across, and I understand how you would have heard it that way. Really beginning to understand where your partner is coming from, the injuries, the hurts, what they're bringing into the relationship from their family of origin, from their background, and beginning to really love that other person with care, with connection, with understanding. And so these are three of the biggest hot buttons that I see in my practice, everything from money to raising our children to having a different version of the same relationship that you're in and responding to each other from that place. And this is where I hope Rekindle.Love can make all the difference, kind of decoding some of the invisible stuff that sits behind these big themes, these big conflict points, to be able to understand where your other partner is coming from, and maybe most importantly, how you can clearly get across what you're trying to say that might have got lost within some of the hurt, within some of your own backgrounds, and getting that clarity through. And so if you're curious, I would love for you to join the Rekindle.Love community. Get that support that you need. Love should not feel this hard, and I want to give you the solutions to make it feel much lighter so that you're getting and enjoying the love that you deserve. Life is too short to keep repeating those painful patterns.